Hi there, I'm Mabel Chan, and this is One in a Billion, Part 7 of our special series, True Colors. True Colors is about the color of our character, not our skin in times of crisis. How we respond reveals who we are, our values, our beliefs, our readiness.
I remember there were students in the hall crying and with their head in their hands, and I just felt also powerless to help them because I also was a student who was getting kicked out.
That is Kimberly Jung, a graduate student at the MIT School of Mechanical Engineering. She was describing what happened earlier this year when she and her friends at MIT had to evacuate from their campus before spring break because the pandemic was spreading so fast. Well, if she sounded powerless at first, that didn't last long. This is the same Kimberly Jung I first interviewed in 2017 when she was a social entrepreneur. She's an Army veteran after having served combat duty in Afghanistan. She's also a West Point graduate and a Harvard MBA graduate. Kimberly always strikes me as a crisis-ready first responder. Her credo?
Number one is a dedication to the mission, to get it done. Number two is the realization that anything really is possible, which means that when times get tough, there is always a way out.
Times did get tough when COVID patients overwhelmed hospitals, and one of the critical needs? Ventilators. Kimberly saw that as her next mission. In this episode of True Colors, Kimberly and I are talking about mission after mission. Here's our conversation. I want to begin, Kim, with a question about what you wrote. You said, with social distancing, long lines, and curfews in place, my life felt upended.
I remember this time being like such a flurry. It went really fast. The MIT administration sent an email out to everybody saying, please don't come back after spring break. Stay home with your parents. And everybody was aghast. And then 2 days later, MIT administration sent out another email saying, actually, everyone needs to be out by Sunday.
Oh, wow.
The situation was rapidly changing. I don't think the administration or anyone else who's in power and trying to manage things knew exactly what was happening, and they were trying to manage everything too. And so everything kind of rolls downhill. Everyone's trying to figure it out. People are scrambling for a place to live.
So, Kim, were you planning to move back to your family in California at that point? Do you remember that moment?
I was not planning to move back with my family. I was going to figure something out.
Remember that moment when you received the notice to move out? Where were you? Were you out jogging, shopping, in class?
My friend called me, and I was wondering why she was calling because she never calls me. We usually just text, and then we see each other in person. But she called me, and she said, Kim, I heard about the news. Do you need a place to stay? You can stay in my apartment. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, didn't you hear the news? MIT is kicking off all the students out of the dorms. And so that's when I checked my email and saw it. And I was, my mouth was open and I was like, what? What's going on? This is crazy.
Did you feel lost, angry, upset, confused?
I didn't. It just went really fast. I don't think I felt that angry or confused. It made sense to me why they would do it. I mean, there's arguments for and against, but when something happens, for me, I don't feel like you need to sit there and feel all the feelings. I just want to move on and figure out the next steps that you have to do to survive,
Right, exactly. And I want to come back to this right away because before you were an engineering student at MIT, you were a business entrepreneur with a booming business. You're an Army veteran. You graduated from West Point. You were on combat duty in Afghanistan for 2 years. You served our country in the military for 5 years. And now this? What's the mission now?
These kind of events are very similar to what happens to you in the military and also what happens when you're in a startup. There's a lot of things that change. You have to deal with these challenges that come up out of nowhere. And so it's not new to me. I think I just have to figure out what's next and make a decision and move on with it.
You're so trained for war, right? For combat, for a mission. You know, or you were told what the enemy was. So I just wonder what's in your head. How did any of what you were prepared for serve you in a time like this?
I think what the military does really well is prepare you as an individual and your team for constant change. One thing that stays the same in the Army is that you're going to move. You're going to get orders. Your orders are going to change. So the battlefield is very much like that. A lot of unknown, a lot of risk, uncertainty. One of the biggest lessons that we learn in the beginning is to know exactly who is under your command or what squad you are in, who's your squad leader, who you're taking orders from, who do you need to make sure knows, like who's working underneath you that you're in charge of. So these basic things, I look back on it and I think that those emergency preparedness skills, looking back, would be really helpful for situations like these when there's like mass chaos. I had been thinking about what I wanted to do long term anyway for my career, and I've always had this business part of me, which also comes from the military, which is leading and organizing and getting people together, organizing resources, finding allies, collaborators. So that's a big part of the skill set that I learned in the military. And then coming to MIT as a mechanical engineer, I started to get those technical skills as well. So what I was looking for was a role that would really allow me to basically like be an executive officer of a technical team managing both the technical and human resources, so I could bridge both worlds.
So at what point did you get involved in the Ventilators project? Tell me about that.
So the MIT eVent team, so stands for Emergency Ventilators, started in early to mid-March, and it was started by one of my professors of mechanical engineering, Alexander Slocum, and he had this vision to be able to add a low-cost, scalable ventilator that would be able to assist hospitals. He upgraded it. We worked very closely with clinicians. So we had partners at MGH, that's Mass General Hospital, and Westchester County Hospital in New York. So the local hospitals and clinicians really teamed up with us to help us understand the clinical requirements first, because those are the safety requirements when it comes down to it, and translating those into engineering requirements that we could design around. So that process took a long time, and in the meantime, if things were building up and we're trying to figure out from the news, like the ventilator need is rising in New York, people are dying, and the doctors and hospitals are asking the engineers to hurry up, and they just need something that works.
What is your role in this?
I came to it as a volunteer, thinking I was just going to do whatever they needed me to do. And it became very clear that what they could really benefit from was my experience in the military and the kind of project management experience I had in emergency situations. When I was in the military, I also spent some time in New York working for a task force called Unwatering, which they renamed Dewatering for Hurricane Sandy. So we were dewatering the tunnels in the subway systems after the big storm from 34th Street south. That street was out of power because all the electrical systems got flooded. So we were there for 2 weeks. Situations like those that got my feet wet in emergency management. And so I wasn't a stranger to this kind of stuff. So establishing a chain of command system and establishing how we were going to meet every day and exchange information, who would tell what, who's responsible for what are our goals, what's our mission, what's our method by which we check off things, and who blesses our final product.
With this project, what is priority number one? To get a design quickly, to be approved and then delivered to the manufacturer? What's the game plan there?
Safety was always number one priority for us, and the second priority was actually information and being transparent about all of our research and development. So primarily the MIT eVent team is a research and development team. So we are fleshing out the design requirements that we get from strict clinical requirements, and we figure out what's right, and we only put out what we know to be true and is tested. So at the end of the day, we were getting a lot of pressure from people to put out our code and to put out the design as fast as possible. But we knew, because there were thousands and thousands of people looking at our website, that if we put out something that was false or that we weren't sure was fully true, that would reverberate throughout, and we didn't want people to die because of our lack of diligence to making sure that the truth was getting out there.
It's been a couple of months since we've been in lockdown. What progress have you made with the ventilators?
One of our manufacturers got FDA emergency use authorization. So we got FDA approval for our device. And so they're looking to make thousands of ventilators for not just New York City, but for the country, internationally, if people need it.
Wow, that's huge. Congratulations.
Thank you. Through the emails and through people calling us and posting about us on the internet, that the DNA from our design has gone out to at least, I would say, like 30 places out there. Countries like Chile, Mexico, and Ireland have actually taken our designs, even to Zimbabwe too, and Afghanistan. They've taken MIT eVent's design and they have used that as a basis for their own prototypes in their countries. So that's very exciting.
Right. Well, it is huge. So what's the shortfall in those places that are taking the design from New York to other countries you have described? Are you able to get a handle on the numbers, or can you quantify it?
So we will be focusing on the research and development. The manufacturers focus on the manufacturing. These aggregators are the ones figuring out how to get a bunch of manufacturers to this and how to fund them. And so it's a bunch of different people all around industry, DOD, military, and academia who are trying to figure out this problem. There you have basically capitalism working together to create something of value. And at the end of the day, you're still figuring out what the market size looks like. You're still figuring out who's the customer, how much are they willing to pay. Obviously, we would want this all to be free. And most of the companies that we worked with were volunteering their time and their effort. But we're talking about thousands of dollars for each ventilator here. To put this all on a manufacturer to donate free materials for this that's not fair, So we have to figure out a funding source for this.
For you, working in this sort of intense life-saving, right? That's what's driving you, isn't it? This life-saving emergency that you're trying to resolve.
Yes, every single one of us. The reason that we joined this project and volunteered, even if all of our many hours could only save one life, it would be worth it.
So you've been involved in this project now for 2 months, physically, mentally, emotionally. How are you changed?
Well, the first thing is that I got a front row seat into medical device design and prototyping and go-to market very, very quickly, which would never happen this fast in normal circumstances. And I got to learn all the mechanical and electrical and controls engineering that I wouldn't have otherwise in a real world situation. So I was with the best of the best. My team, they're brilliant. I've made some really, really great friends, and that's probably the best thing that's happened in all of this. And I think all of us together feel this way.
Wow. Like another team of comrades in arms.
Exactly. It's another squad again. And it's, this is very much like a deployment, and it's the same pace and the same level of urgency, and us being part of something greater than ourselves. This is what being human is all about.
It's been a couple of months now since we went into lockdown here, right, in Cambridge. I guess I just want to ask maybe a philosophical question about how are you seeing your relationship with your life, with your work, with everyone else close to you?
That's a great question for me now, because things have changed a lot since I met Alex, my boyfriend, and we moved in together. Things are changing, and I think there's a quote from C.S. Lewis about, paddling as a young boy and reaching, a place where the things that used to delight you don't delight you anymore. And instead of trying to resurrect that feeling of paddling as a young boy, you learn to swim, and you learn to do new things and to find, and for me, it's learning to invest myself into other people. It's learning to give back to the community more. It's figuring out my place in life and how I can best give back to the community. What am I good at? So there's things that I like doing and things that I am good at doing. I'm finding a convergence in those things now, and also thinking about becoming a mother.
Wow, that's huge, Kim. I'm sorry that I'm screaming.
Mabel's known me for a while, so she's...
Oh my gosh.
My parents were listening. They'd be like, what? But like,
this is huge, Kim. You've been keeping this from
now.
Still, you're thinking about it. This is fantastic.
Well, I've never thought about like another person.
Tell me more. This investing in other people and being a mother. Tell me more. I'm going to shut up now. All right, tell me more, Kim.
Most of my life has been like real hard charging, right? Like I'm like surviving, going to the military, like leading people. Okay, great. And it's nice to just sit back a little bit, and people ask me for advice on food startups. And so I mentor some people for that. I just did a webinar recently for Teen Science Cafe to talk to teenage girls if they A, want to go to the military or West Point, B, if they want to start a business, and C, if they want to be in STEM. I guess I look back and it happens to be that the three defined career paths I've taken are all places where like I feel girls and women aren't necessarily encouraged to go to, and then maybe you seem more male dominated. So I recognize that I can spend more time being a role model for, girls and women, I mean young boys too if they want to.
I wonder when you're out and about during this period of isolated reality, what else have you witnessed on the ground or experienced when you're walking around that led you to give a nod to someone who is an essential worker, or think differently about the meaning of this person's work or the purpose of your own life and the rest of our time here, however long we may have?
I'm super thankful for the people who are going to the hospitals every day, the nurses and the doctors who, even the podiatrists are working at the ICU sometimes, right? Or, they're doing stuff that's outside of what they would normally do, but they're doing stuff and they're heeding the call to serve in ways that they might not be used to all the time. And, there's people who are making sure that people are lined up correctly in the grocery store, outside the grocery store. That's a thankless job. The people who are out there picking food for agriculture in the fields, like, they're not stopping for COVID. Like, America needs to eat. I need to eat.
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned these incidents and these workers. Well, for me, is the truck drivers and the UPS, the post office people. They're still delivering the trash. They're still picking it up and even with more urgency. I noticed them before, but I feel as if they're still moving on and they're still keeping their head down and doing their job. Suddenly, I just feel as if they are bigger than life. They're still out there bearing whatever it is that may come their way,
Yeah, that's so true. And also as human beings, we like to put narratives around these things. We have to put meaning into it. And if I put myself in their shoes, on one hand, it can be really scary. As human beings, we should just be thankful that we're part of something greater, and then also recognize that we have these kind of built-in urges to be able to be part of something, to work, to feel like we're contributing. And it's not just a selfish thing. It's something that I think we're just physically hardwired, built for that.
Thank you, Kimberly. That was awesome. In our next episode of True Colors.
And as a Chinese American being born in the U.S., that was not the first time I've had a racist incident against me. It caused me to look at myself and look at my history, and all of a sudden made me think about what it means to belong.
That's Janet Wu, a Bloomberg radio reporter and former TV anchor at WCVB in Boston. What happened to her? How did that force her to examine her cultural identity, her own prejudice? That is our next episode, The Bias Before the Virus, in 2 weeks. 1 in a Billion is
Brian Latwinowicz,
Yvette Yu, Maggie She, Leah Yen Jarrett.
And our lovely theme song is composed by Brad McCarthy. Let us know if you want to join our team of volunteers, help us plan events, pitch a story. Just go to our website, oneinaBillionVoices.org, and find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.